Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. After reading about 4 books from William Walker Atkinson, I wanted to dedicate an episode to his discussion of using thought force and magnetism, the projection of energy into other people's auras as a means of psychic power. Understanding it is important because I believe other people are using it. William Walker Atkinson was a pivotal figure in the New Thought movement, contributing significantly through his writings on mental power, the law of attraction, and psychic phenomena. His works on using magnetic and psychic forces to influence others delve deeply into the practical applications of these concepts, particularly through the power of the eye and the development of what he terms the magnetic gaze. I wanted to discuss this with a warning. I have avoided discussing many of Atkinson's books because they're a little bit on the service to self side, giving you techniques to control others, which is not in the realm of serving others or love. The argument can be made that if you understand this, you can project your will to help people out. I have not quite figured out the nature of this, and the reason I'm discussing this is I became aware I was unconsciously doing this. In my relationships, in conversations with others, I was utilizing these powers. So I feel a little bit like a Jedi teaching Sith techniques, but it's important to understand where they come from and how they use them. And if you understand that you are this battery of energy that's extending energy outward at all times, projecting it in the environment around you. And if you can understand this, you can project magnetic power in a safe and powerful way that may help others on some level. There's several books that I would recommend from Atkinson: The Art and Science of Personal Magnetism, The Arcane Formulas or Mental Alchemy, Mind Power, The Secret of Mental Magic, and also his book, Thought Force in Business and Everyday Life. Instead of just reading all 4 books, I wanted to sort of give you some summaries of what I was able to learn from these different books, because he talks about using different forces, like using the nerve energy in your body, using something called volic force, using the magnetic gaze, as well as using something called the direct flash, projecting intentions into other people's auras. These are things that you can understand, but when you understand it, it allows you to protect yourself, but also it's super fascinating. To begin with, Atkinson posits the eye as a critical instrument for exerting influence over others. He suggests that a trained eye can convey mental vibrations directly to others, thereby enabling a person to impress their will upon another. This power, according to Atkinson, is not only a method for holding attention, but also a formidable means of mental control that can influence wild beasts and savages. Have you ever seen somebody that's super magnetic and their eyes seem to do something a little bit different? The process involves using the eye to command attention at the outset of an interaction, maintaining this attention to convey suggestions, and using a magnetic gaze to strengthen one's influence. Atkinson advises against letting others influence you in a similar manner, advocating for a strong mental posture to resist such attacks. Atkinson explains, for instance, in an interview, one of the most important things about the beginning of an interview is that you should look the other person squarely in the eye with a firm, steady magnetic gaze. You need not stare at him, but your gaze must be steady and firm, and indicative of strong willpower and concentration. During the conversation, you may change the direction of your gaze, but whenever you make a proposition, statement, or request, or whatever you wish to impress him strongly, you must direct a firm, steady, magnetic gaze towards him, looking him straight in the eye. This is highly important and must not be neglected. When you are talking business, have an earnest, determined look or manner and hold the other man's attention. If you cannot get him to look at you in the way above mentioned, it is a very good plan to have something to show him, a sample picture or some other object appertaining to your business. He has 2 exercises that you can use to increase your magnetic gaze. The first is take a piece of white writing paper about 6 inches square, upon which you have drawn a circle about the size of a silver $quarter. The circle then being filled in with black ink so that the spot will stand out black and distinct upon the white background. Pin the paper upon the wall at about the height of your eyes when you are seated. Place your chair in the middle of the room and seat yourself directly facing the paper. Fix your eyes steadily upon the black spot and gaze at it firmly without winking for 1 minute. After resting the eyes, practice the exercise again. Repeat 5 times. With the chair in its original place, you move your paper 3 feet to the right of its original position. Seat yourself and fix your gaze on the wall directly in front of you. Then, without moving the head, cast eyes to the right and gaze steadily on the spot for 1 minute. Repeat 4 times. Then, placing the paper on the wall 3 feet to the left of its original position, gaze steadily at the spot for 1 minute. Repeat 5 times. Continue this exercise for 3 days and then increase the time of the gaze to 2 minutes. At the end of 3 more days, increase the time to 3 minutes, and so increasing the time 1 minute every 3 days. Some persons have acquired the power of gazing steadily for 20 or 30 minutes without winking or having their eyes fill with water, but I do not advise extending the limit beyond 15 minutes. The man who can maintain the gaze for 15 minutes can direct a powerful gaze as he who has attained the 30-minute record. This exercise is the most important one. If faithfully followed up, will enable you to gaze steadily and earnestly at anyone with whom you are talking. It will impart a strong and masterful expression to the eye, enable you to maintain a steady gaze which few will be able to withstand. Dogs and other animals will quail before your gaze, and its effect will manifest itself also in numerous other ways. The practice of the exercise is somewhat tedious, but anyone will be amply repaid for the time and trouble bestowed upon it. If you're practicing hypnotism, you will find this gaze most helpful to you if you have the further effect of causing the eye to appear fuller by increasing the space around the eyelids. The second exercise, you may supplement the first exercise with the following, which will add variety, relieve the monotony, and accustom you to the gaze and to others without embarrassment. Stand in front of your mirror and gaze into the reflection of your own eyes in the manner mentioned in the first exercise. Increase the time as in the previous exercise. This exercise will accustom you to bear the gaze of others and will enable you to obtain the best expression of the eye, and in others will be useful to you. It will enable you to see the growth and development of the characteristic expression of your eye when it is acquiring the magnetic gaze. By all means, practice this exercise systematically. Some authorities prefer this exercise to the preceding one, but in my opinion, the best results are obtained by a combination of the two. A third exercise is to stand erect facing the wall at a distance of 3 feet. Place your sheet of paper in front of you with the spot directly in front of the eyes. Fix the gaze upon the spot and then move your head around in a circle, keeping your gaze fixed upon the spot. As this exercise causes the eyes to roll around in keeping the gaze steady, the nerves and muscles receive considerable exercise. Vary the exercise by circling the head in different directions. Use this exercise mildly at first to avoid tiring the eyes. Another exercise he gives is to stand with your back against the wall and facing toward the opposite wall. Shift your gaze rapidly from one point of the wall to another, right, left, up, down, zigzag, circle, etc. This exercise should be discontinued when the eyes begin to feel tired. The best plan for concluding the exercise being to gaze intently at one point, which will rest the eyes after the previous motion. This exercise is calculated to strengthen the muscles and nerves of the eye. And the fifth exercise he gives is after having acquired a firm gaze, you gain confidence by persuading a friend to allow you to practice your gaze upon him. Place your friend in a chair opposite your own. Sit down and gaze calmly, steadily, and firmly into his eyes, instructing him to look at you as long as he can. You will find that you will easily tire him out, and that by the time he cries enough, he will be in an almost hypnotic condition. If you have a hypnotic subject, he or she will answer still better. You also might try the strength of your gaze on a dog, cat, or other animal, provided that you are able to induce it to stand still or lie still. You will find, however, that most animals will move away or turn the head in order to avoid your steady gaze. You, of course, will distinguish between a steady, calm gaze and an impudent stare. The first is indicative of the man of strong physical power, whilst the latter denotes the cad. Atkinson later goes on to suggest the volic force, which is the term volation to indicate the idea that the conscious effort of the will producing thought vibrations and impelling the same toward a given object. The volic power is one of nature's most potent forces, Atkinson said, and at the same time is the least understood. It is exerted more or less unconsciously by all men. Some are aware of its effects without understanding the laws of its production and development. It may be greatly increased by intelligent practice and training if one will devote the task necessary time and effort. To be able to make intelligent use of the volic force, it is necessary, according to Atkinson, to understand the real nature of the will. And to understand the real nature of the will, you must realize what is the real man. Many of us have been in the habit of thinking of the ego, the I of ourselves, as merely the physical body. This is the materialistic point of view. Others think of their I as a mental creature, having control of the body and having his abode in the brain. This is partially correct, but is only half the truth. Others realize there is a higher self in man, and a few have recognized that higher self and live in accord with its dictates. The real ego or I is as much higher than mind, and mind is higher than the body, and both body and mind are subordinate to it. Both are its tools and are used for its work when it seems fit to use them. The real self is that which we feel when in times of reverie and introspection we think or say, I am. All of us have felt this consciousness of the real self at certain times in our lives. So he's talking about using the force of the I am as an actual force that you can direct, a magnetic force that you can project. Think quietly and calmly on the words I am, and endeavor to picture your real self superior to both mind and body, is what Atkinson prescribes. If you've secured the proper state of mind and body, you will perceive a glimmer of the presence of the real self within you. Continue the practice. It will awaken in your mind a perception of the truth. Nothing can injure or destroy the real self. The body and mind may pass away, but the I am is eternal and impregnable to harm. It is powerful, and when the mind has learned to adapt itself to its influence, man becomes like another being and acquires hitherto unknown powers. Atkinson explains the I am is your real self. When your mind recognizes its master, you will have learned the secret of life. I've planted this thought seed in your mind, and it will grow and evolve into a beautiful plant, bearing a flower whose fragrance will surpass that of the earth's fairest blossoms. When its leaves unfold and show the flower in all its beauty, Atkinson says, then will you know that you have found yourself. Lord of 1,000 worlds am I, and I reign since time began. And night and day in cyclic sway shall pass while their deeds I scan. Yet time shall cease ere I find release, for I am the soul of man. This concept leads Atkinson to explain something called direct volation. The exercise of volation differs very materially in degree among different men. It may be stated broadly that a man exerts an influence over other men in an exact ratio of his measure of volation. The leader of men has developed this power to a comparatively high degree, although perhaps unconsciously and without a knowledge of the workings of the mighty force which is operating in his behalf. So here he's basically saying that there is a force that is utilized, particularly by leaders of men, that you can call volation. When you tap into it, a lot of times it's unconscious, you're not aware of it. The prime requisite, according to Atkinson, for the art of volation is the recognition of the power of the real self, the I am. The more complete the recognition, the greater the power. He claims that he cannot give specific directions. You must feel it rather than reason it out. You will not be in doubt as to whether you are on the right track. You will realize it at once. As near as I can express it to you, is to say that you will feel that your body is a suit of clothes, which whilst covering you temporarily is not you, that you are separate and apart from your body, and superior to it. And although for the time being connected with it, you will realize that even your mind is not you, but that it is merely the instrument through which you manifest yourself, and which, being imperfect, prevents the complete expression of your real self. In short, when you say or think I am, you are conscious of the existence of your real self and feel the growth of a new sense of power within you. The recognition of the self may be but faint, but encourage it and it will grow, and whilst growing, will manifest itself to your mind by impressing upon the latter the knowledge of the proper plan for further development. This is completely reflective of what we talk about on the channel, from Neville Goddard to the I Am discourses to Joseph Murphy. Realize that if you're a big fan of any sort of occult literature, Hermetics or Rosicrucianism, most of it comes from William Walker Atkinson. He is supposed to be the author of the Kybalion. And so a lot of this information that you will find in mystery schools and secret societies. Now, the next level of volation that Atkinson gave is telepathic volation. He explains that every thought, whether voluntary or involuntary, causes thought waves or vibrations to be projected into space, which vibrations affect the minds of others to a greater or lesser degree. There is a way to project thought vibrations toward another person in a straight line and thereby attract his attention to you. This plan, compared to the ordinary plan of undirected projection of thought waves, is a rifle ball compared to a load of mustard seed shot. The rifle ball is vastly superior, providing your aim is straight. Some masters of mental science have attained a wonderful proficiency in the art of telepathic volation, and some of the results secured by them would be deemed incredible by those not familiar with the laws of directed thought vibration. These results have been accomplished only by years of study, experiment, and the leading of a life far different from that of ordinary men. Atkinson explains that all thoughts produce vibrations which spread like ripples on a pond, produced by the casting in of a pebble. They affect people in all directions. If, however, you throw the pebble along the surface of the water, the ripples will manifest their energy in the direction in which the stone travels. He later explains that the best results are obtained when you get the impression of looking through a long tube about 1 foot in diameter, you being on one end and your man or woman on the other. This impression, which can be acquired by concentration, is an indication of perfect rapport and indicates that you have succeeded in shutting out all outside impressions and have opened up the psychic line of communication. To begin the process, he explains that you do not frown or clench your fists in your efforts to think, but remain passive and relaxed. The effort must be calm, steady mental effort. You'll be assisted by the closing of the eyes and the production of a mental image of the person with whom you wish to get rapport. If you've never seen this person, make the mental figure without distinct features. After a few trials, you will notice the mental picture seems more real to you, and you connect with him through a tube, is how he explains it. Now, another fascinating area of projecting magnetic force, explained by Atkinson, is in the generation of nerve force. Atkinson's discourse on the generation and distribution of nerve force, as described in his work, delves into the intricate relationship between physical vitality and mental processes. Atkinson introduces the idea that generating nerve force within the nervous system is more an act of absorption and distribution than of creation. And he suggests that this nerve force, essential for personal magnetism, can be replenished through special forms of breathing that absorb energy from the atmosphere. If you've ever met somebody that is really into breath work, you'll also notice that they're very magnetic. This notion aligns with the belief in a universal energy accessible through proper physiological and mental techniques. You're absorbing energy from the atmosphere through your breath. The first step in generating nerve force involves absorbing extra nerve force through the atmosphere via breathing techniques. Atkinson states, you naturally ask at this point, what is the particular breath rhythm which nature uses to aid us in recuperating, and which nature uses to aid us in using the recuperating, and which may be assumed with such wonderful result? Very well, let me answer you by asking you another question, namely, how do you breathe when you begin to recuperate just after a severe emotional, mental, or physical strain? When the characteristic first panting breath quiets down, if you will consider carefully, you will answer that. You'll begin by 1 or 2 long, drawn-out, sighing breaths, followed by a period of calm, deliberate, slow, deep breaths. You may not have noticed it, but these last calm, deep breaths are marked by a slow but regular rhythm, as regular indeed as the slow swing of the pendulum of a large clock or accompanying tick thereof. You will find that this slow, regular, rhythmic breath continues for some little time until you feel refreshed and reinvigorated, when the breath will drop into the normal everyday rhythm and the task is over. This is exactly the breath rhythm which, if properly assumed and well acted out, will result in drawing you a greatly increased supply of nerve force from the universal storehouse of the same and the atmosphere around you. Doesn't sound complicated. You're taking big, deep inhales with sighs, exhales, and you're slowing down your breath. This begins the process of generating nerve force in the body. He dedicates an entire additional chapter to emotional and physical states, explaining the connection between these breathing rhythms and mental or physical states, suggesting that each state induces a specific breathing pattern. Conversely, intentionally adopting a particular breath rhythm can evoke the corresponding emotional or physical state. This reciprocal relationship highlights the power of breath as a tool for self-regulation and transformation. When Neville Goddard tells us that states are creative, and by entering into the state of the wish fulfilled, or whatever state you enter into, is how you create your reality. One thing we really haven't discussed enough is finding out the breathing pattern of that state, finding the breathing pattern of that emotional feeling that you have. The next step is distributing the nerve force. After absorbing nerve force, distributing it through the nervous system is crucial. This distribution revitalizes the body, enhancing physical and psychic vitality. Atkinson details a natural process involving deep sighs and deliberate slow breaths, which he claims facilitates the recovery and strengthening of the system. He also emphasizes stretching and Qigong type exercises. He points out that stretching exercises following the absorption of nerve force play a vital role in its distribution. These exercises, often instinctive responses to fatigue or awakening, help distribute the absorbed energy to the body's extremities and vital centers. This process not only refreshes but also prepares the body for further activity or relaxation. So if you've ever done yoga and you get that sort of burst of energy from yoga, it's from generating this nerve force which has magnetic principles and properties. His teachings on nerve force generation and distribution offer a valuable insight into managing personal energy and enhancing your influence over yourself and others. And this approach encourages a mindful engagement of your physiological and psychological states, advocating a sort of balance that fosters personal magnetism and psychic influence, according to Atkinson. In another book, Atkinson discusses mental radiation, introducing the concept by referring to the work of Professor Ochorowicz, among others, to establish a scientific basis for the idea that every living being is a dynamic focus capable of transmitting its own motion or energy. This transmission can change according to the medium it traverses, hinting at the ability of thoughts and mental states to influence beyond the physical confines of the brain. He uses analogies from physics such as electricity and magnetism to suggest that just as physical energy can be transformed and transmitted across mediums, so can mental energy or thought vibrations, underpinning the theory that our mental states emit vibrations that can affect not only ourselves, but also the people we interact with and the environment around us. We may say, I would never try to control or influence someone, but we're controlling and influencing people all the time by our very state. And so we understand and we can create a loving state. We're actually influencing those around us. Maybe not intentionally, but it's part of the process. And so he dedicates a lot of discussion on mental attitudes in relation to this, emphasizing the power of mental attitudes, arguing that the mental state significantly influences our personal magnetism, shaping our self-perception, but also how others perceive us, categorizing mental attitudes into positive and negative, suggesting that cultivating a positive mental attitude enhances personal strength, resilience, and influence. And he advises to consciously cultivate positive mental attributes such as courage, determination, and masterfulness, while eliminating negative ones like fear and doubt. He proposes practical methods for developing these attitudes, such as surrounding yourself with positive influences, engaging with uplifting literature and individuals, and consistently visualizing an ideal self. His discussion on mental radiation and attitudes aligns with contemporary understandings of the placebo effect, the power of positive thinking, and the impact of mindset on physical health and social interaction. His approach, blending scientific theories and concepts, underscores an early recognition of the interconnectedness of the mind and body. In another book, Atkinson describes magnetic currents. He describes personal magnetism as a force comprising both physical and mental energy which forms currents or waves within an individual's aura. These magnetic waves, when intersected with another person's mind, can induce a mental state corresponding to the originator's intent. The process of changing one's aura with these energies doesn't require separate acts for physical and mental magnetism, but a unified effort of will. He likens this to threading two silk threads through the needle of will and stitching them into the fabric of reality, regularly charging the personal atmosphere and ensuring a robust aura, especially before interactions where influence or resistance to influence is desired, enhancing your magnetic presence. The magnetic currents, although often operating involuntarily, can be directed consciously through interest and attention, magnifying personal influence. After discussing this, he discusses something called the direct flash. The direct flash method involves a conscious, deliberate projection of personal magnetism towards others, akin to an electric spark's immediate impact. It combines mental imagery, the amalgamation of physical and mental magnetism, and a sharp, willful effort to send a commanding force. This practice, honed through exercises like engaging with one's reflection to command, influence perceived actions, develops the capability to exert tangible influence on others without direct gaze or acknowledgement. The first exercise he gives for the direct flash consists of the process of causing a person ahead of you on the street to turn around as if they had heard someone call out to him by name. The process is simple. You have but to walk some little distance behind another person on the street, park, or other public place. Concentrate your fixed attention on the person, gazing at the lower back part of his head, and sending him first a strong flash of magnetic force, this being followed by the direct flash command, "Here, you, turn around," just as if you were actually calling out loud to him. You may even whisper the words so softly that no one else can hear them. This may help you to put force into the command at first, but you will soon outgrow the need for the same. At the time you send the flash command, you must actually will that person will around you in your direction. Put all the magnetic force within you in this effort. You will find that in some cases the other person will turn his head almost at once and look inquiringly behind him in your direction. In the majority of cases, however, he will take a longer time about it. He will be apt to first grow uneasy and restless and begin by glancing from side to side as if looking for someone. Then he will almost, but not quite, turn his head around. Then finally he will glance backward somewhat furtively and suspiciously. The second exercise, when in church, theater, or other public place, or even a room full of company, fix your gaze at the lower back of the head of some person in the place and send him the direct flash command, "Here, you, turn around and look at me," using all your magnetic force within you and putting the force of your will back to the command. You will notice the same peculiar result as in the preceding exercise. The third exercise is a variation of the first exercise. It consists of making the person ahead of you turn to the right or to the left while walking ahead of you. The fourth is another variation in which you get the other person to turn and glance to the left and the right. Another experiment they talk about is someone who has a cane or umbrella or a fan or handkerchief and making them drop that object. He has a number of other exercises as well as something he calls the direct command. And he discusses how to put this into someone's aura. And there's a fascinating chapter called The Magnetic Duel in his Art and Science of Personal Magnetism, where you have two people that are magnetic and the interplay of two people that are magnetic in the magnetic duel, two people that are interacting in that way. And he also discusses magnetic self-defense as a part of this process. The key being that in defending oneself against magnetic projection in any or all of its forms, you have to project toward the other person a strong denial of his power to influence, affect, or master you. That is the whole thing in a nutshell. He has a whole chapter on it, but it's in a nutshell. You simply project back a denial of their magnetic power. Creating and maintaining a positive aura involves using the direct flash technique to affect a group en masse rather than individuals. This method is useful in situations requiring a broad influence such as public speaking or leadership. He shares stories of students who overcame personal challenges by applying these principles, demonstrating the transformative power of a well-cultivated magnetic presence in achieving respect, attention, and success in various social and professional contexts. The direct command combines the techniques learned previously through the mirror exercise and the cultivation of personal aura and positive aura to exert influence directly and consciously. He stresses the ethical responsibility accompanying this power, cautioning against misuse and highlighting the potential for profound personal and professional impact when used with integrity. Atkinson's exploration into the realms of personal magnetism and mental currents and power of directed will offers a comprehensive guide for harnessing internal energies to influence the external world. And I highly recommend that you read his books with the caveat understanding that there is a darker side to this where it can be used to manipulate and control others. Utilizing these techniques raises ethical considerations. The deliberate cultivation of a gaze or magnetic force or projection designed to dominate or control others will affect you personally. And in many cases, remember that everybody that you're projecting your power towards has the same I am power. It can come back to you, and you can find yourself being dominated and controlled in other aspects of your life. So you must be very careful in using these sort of techniques because it will have a direct impact if you use it incorrectly. There are adepts who use white magic and can influence people in the proper way to find and open themselves to love, to resolve catalyst, to transmute energy. And in those cases, this sort of power can be used, but it's a delicate balance. These can be tools of personal advancement and protection. The potential for misuse underscores the importance of knowing about this and the ethical considerations in applying these techniques. So I give you this information with that warning. And you can read further on this. Atkinson's work is very, very thoughtful and powerful in mental domination, control, and asserting magnetic influence. But it is also important to note how he talks about the importance of the body and nerve energies in your body and breathing techniques, so that this is a holistic approach. And if you truly want to increase your own personal magnetism and use it to project, it is an approach that requires you to meld the mind and body and enter into a proper mental state. Using proper breathing techniques, you can expand your loving presence in a good and positive way to serve others with your magnetism. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.